Laura had always believed cheap rent came with small inconveniences. A noisy street, old pipes, thin walls, but the Monteverde building offered silence. Too much silence. 12 floors, according to the listing. An aging structure with dim hallways and a single elevator that groaned every time it moved. Laura moved in alone, excited about the quiet and the unbelievable price. On her first night, she noticed the building had a habit. After midnight, the lights in the corridor flickered for exactly 10 seconds, then stopped. Weird, but she figured it was just old wiring. She never saw any of her neighbors. No one ever stepped outside their apartments when she was in the hallway. She told herself it was nothing. People in the city keep to themselves. A week passed. The nightly light show continued, punctual as a clock. The silence in the building deepened, becoming less peaceful and more unnerving. It felt heavy, like it was pressing in on her. Laura started to feel watched. She'd be cooking in her kitchen and get a prickly feeling on the back of her neck, as if eyes were on her from the hallway. She tried to introduce herself to the woman in 7B, knocking on the door with a plate of homemade cookies. No answer. She left them by the door. The next morning, the plate was gone, but the silence remained. The isolation was starting to get to her. She started talking to herself, just to hear a voice. One evening, driven by a growing dread, she decided to investigate. She waited until the flicker started, then she slowly opened her door and peeked out. The hallway was empty, bathed in the strobe-like flashes of the dying lights. On the final flicker, just before darkness returned, she saw it. A shadow, tall and gaunt, standing at the far end of the hall, right by the emergency exit. It wasn't there before, and it was gone when the main lights clicked back on. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She slammed the door shut, locking it, her breath catching in her throat. It was just a trick of the light, she told herself, a shadow cast by the flickering bulb. But she couldn't shake the image of that figure, standing perfectly still, as if it was waiting. The next night, she didn't peek. She stayed in her apartment, music playing loud enough to drown out her own frantic thoughts. But at midnight, when the lights outside began their ritual, her music player sputtered and died. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, a soft scratching sound started at her door. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Slow and deliberate. It sounded like a long fingernail being dragged across the wood. Laura froze, pressing herself against the far wall of her living room, her eyes wide with terror. The scratching stopped. A moment later, a piece of paper slid under her door. Her hands trembled as she crawled over to it. On it, written in shaky, spidery handwriting, were 3 words. You saw me. Fear gave way to a desperate need for answers. Who were her neighbors? What was happening in this building? The next day, she went down to the building manager's office in the basement. It was a dusty, forgotten room filled with old filing cabinets. The manager, a tired-looking old man named Mr. Henderson, seemed reluctant to talk. When Laura mentioned the flickering lights and the strange occurrences, he paled. He told her she should just ignore it. Some buildings have quirks, he said, avoiding her eyes. But Laura pressed him, telling him about the note. His resolve crumbled. He finally admitted that the building wasn't full. In fact, she was the only living tenant. The other apartments, they weren't empty. They were occupied by the lingering former tenants who had passed away within the building's walls, their spirits now trapped. He explained that the flickering lights were a sign of their activity, a brief thinning of the veil between worlds. The 12th floor, he whispered, was sealed off for a reason. That was where the first one had died, the one they called the Watcher. It was the spirit she had seen, the one who noticed her, noticing them. It doesn't like to be seen, Mr. Henderson warned, his voice trembling. Now that it knows you can see it, it won't leave you alone. A cold dread washed over Laura. She wasn't just living in a quiet building, she was living in a mausoleum, and she had just caught the attention of its oldest, most territorial resident. What happens when the Watcher in the dark decides to do more than just watch? The first disappearance was subtle, a whisper in the concrete halls of the apartment building. 1 week after the strange humming started, 2 police officers stood in the lobby, their blue uniforms stark against the faded floral wallpaper. A woman from the 7th floor was missing. Just gone. The building manager, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with mild indifference, spoke to them in a calm, almost rehearsed tone. "People leave," he'd said, shrugging. "People disappear. Cities are big places. They forget." His words were meant to be reassuring, a simple explanation for a complex world, but they hung in the air, heavy and wrong. Laura watched from the doorway of her own apartment on the top floor. She didn't know the missing woman personally. Justa passing hello in the hallway, the scent of her perfume lingering in the elevator. But the manager's nonchalance felt like a lie. Later that day, as she rode the elevator up to her floor, she saw it. The panel, a grid of glowing plastic buttons, flickered. For a split second, "Te nombro ocho humpet, to siete, tento nueve," then back again. But then, it did something else. It flashed a number that wasn't there. A 13. In a 12-story building. Laura blinked, thinking she'd imagined it. The doors slid open on her floor, the 12th, and she stepped out, shaking her head. It was just old wiring, she told herself. This building was full of quirks. But that night, the quirks became a cacophony. As she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she heard it. Footsteps. Pacing, back and forth, right above her head. The sound was distinct, the heavy tread of work boots on a hard surface. But that was impossible. She lived on the top floor. Above her was only the roof, a flat expanse of tar and gravel, inaccessible to tenants. The pacing continued for nearly an hour, a relentless, rhythmic march that seemed to wear a path into her sanity. She pulled the covers over her head, her heart hammering against her ribs. The city doesn't forget, she thought. It just hides things. The next morning, Laura was a ghost of herself, fueled by cheap coffee and annoying dread. She decided to do what the police hadn't. She started on the 7th floor, at the missing woman's apartment. The door was sealed with a strip of yellow police tape, a stark warning. Peeking through the mail slot, she saw a perfectly normal scene. A half-finished puzzle on a coffee table, a pair of slippers by the door. It looked like someone had just stepped out for a moment, but a thick layer of dust was already settling on every surface, as if the apartment itself was being erased. Her investigation led her to the basement, a place she usually avoided. It was a labyrinth of storage cages and groaning pipes. Tucked away in a forgotten corner, behind a stack of old newspapers yellowed with age, she found a set of blueprints for the building, day very old. The paper brittle and smelling of mildew. She unrolled them on the dusty concrete floor. Floor 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 12. Everything was as it should be, but then she noticed a faint annotation, scribbled in pencil at the very top, in a spidery, almost illegible hand. Floor 13, the quiet room. Her blood ran cold. There was no 13th floor. It wasn't on the elevator panel. It wasn't on the official city record she'd checked online. It was a secret, hidden in plain sight, driven by a mix of terror and an obsessive need for answers. Laura knew what she had to do. That night, she took the elevator, her toolbox clutched in her hand. She pried open the control panel. Behind the plastic buttons was a nest of wires, a chaotic mess of red, blue, and yellow. And there, disconnected and tucked away, was a single black wire leading to a button with no label. Her hands trembled as she connected it. The panel flickered to life. All the numbers lit up, 1 through 12. And then, a new number glowed with a soft, malevolent light. 13. She pressed it. The elevator didn't go up. It didn't go down. It jolted sideways, a stomach-churning lurch into darkness, moving through a space that shouldn't exist. The door slid open, not onto a hallway, but into a single, windowless room. The air was stale and cold, and in the center of the room stood the missing woman from the 7th floor. Her eyes were wide and vacant. She wasn't alone. Others were there, standing silent and still, their faces blank. They all turned their heads in unison to look at her. The last thing Laura saw, before the elevator door slid shut, trapping her with them, was the building manager, standing in the corner of the room, a faint, knowing smile on his face. He held a single key in his hand. The city doesn't forget. It just finds a new place to store its secrets. Another empty apartment, That makes 3 this month. First, it was Mr. Abernathy from 7BA Choir, retired librarian. Then, 2 weeks later, Sarah from 4C, the young graphic designer who always had headphones on. Now, it's David from my own floor, 9A. His dog has been barking for 2 straight days. 3 people. All gone. No moving trucks, no goodbyes, no forwarding address. Just vanished. The police came, asked their questions, and left with shrugs and promises to look into it. But I see the pattern they're missing. Or maybe the pattern they don't want to see. Each of them lived alone. Each disappearance happened at night, and the last time anyone saw any of them, they were getting into the elevator. The building manager, a grumpy man named Mr. Henderson, just waves it off. People move out, he grumbles. It's a city. People come and go. But not like this. Not leaving behind everything they own. Clothes still in the closet. Food still in the fridge. David's poor dog. It's not normal. So I started my own investigation. I bought a new notebook, a fresh pack of pens, and I began to document everything. Every little detail, no matter how insignificant it seemed. My notebook is filling up fast. I've started a timeline for each disappearance. Mr. Abernathy. A Tuesday night, around PSPM. Sarah, a Wednesday, closer to midnight. David, a Sunday, probably after 1 a.m. I've been interviewing the other tenants, subtly, of course. A casual chat in the laundry room. Quick hello in the hallway. You ask if they've heard anything. Shouldn anything. Most just shake their heads, their eyes darting away, eager to end the conversation. But a few have given me pieces. Mrs. Gable in 3F mentioned a strange sound on the night Sarah disappeared. A grinding, she called it, like metal on metal. She thought it was the pipes. But the sounds aren't just in the pipes. I've been staying up late, sitting in my living room with the lights off, just listening. The building groans and settles, as old buildings do. But there are other noises, a faint scraping from the walls, a low hum that seems to vibrate through the floor, and then there's the smell. It comes and goes, but it's always strongest near the emergency stairwell at the end of the hall. A sharp, coppery, metallic odor, like old pennies, or something else. Something my brain refuses to identify. I've seen Mr. Henderson taking out unusually heavy, black trash bags at 3 in the morning. Far too late for regular garbage collection. When I asked him about it, he just glared and said it was renovation debris. There are no renovations happening, but the heart of it all, the nexus of this whole nightmare, is the elevator. I've become obsessed with it. I take the stairs now, all 9 flights, but I watch the elevator. I watch the floor indicator above the doors. Sometimes, it does something strange. It will be heading up, past my floor, and then just stop. Between 10 and 11. It just hangs there for a minute, maybe 2, before continuing on its way. Or it'll be on the ground floor, doors closed, with no one inside, and the in-use light will flicker on. Last night, I couldn't sleep. I crept to my door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, silent. I watched the elevator indicator. It was on the 12th floor, the top floor. And then, slowly, it began its descent. 11, 10. It stopped on my floor. 9. The doors didn't open. The light stayed on. I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could hear a faint sound through my door, a wet, dragging sound. And that smell, that metallic smell, seeped under my door. Primadaba, scared away, my hands shaking. The elevator stayed on my floor for what felt like an eternity before finally continuing down to the lobby. Someone, or something, is using that elevator. And it's not for riding. I think it's for hunting, and I have a terrible feeling that it knows I'm watching. Thanks for watching. Have you ever been alone in an elevator, late at night? That feeling when the doors slide shut and it is just you and the hum of the machine. For Laura, a graphic designer working late, this was a routine she never thought twice about, until tonight. She stepped into the empty elevator. the scent of old metal and disinfectant hanging in the air. She pressed the button for the ground floor, G, and leaned back against the cool wall, scrolling through her phone. The building was silent, a stark contrast to the daytime hustle. The elevator began its descent, floor numbers lighting up and then dimming as it passed. 10, 9, 8. Standard stuff, but then, 7 and 6 floors. It happened. A sudden, jarring lurch. The elevator shuddered to a halt, throwing Laura slightly off balance. The main lights flickered, went out, and for a terrifying second, she was plunged into absolute darkness. Then, the emergency lights kicked on, casting a dim, eerie red glow across the small space. Laura's heart was pounding in her chest. She stabbed at the G button again. Nothing. She tried the door open button. Nothing. A knot of panic began to tighten in her stomach. She fumbled for her phone, but of course, there was no signal. She was trapped. She pressed the emergency call button, a small, red button she'd never noticed before. A crackle of static, then silence. She was completely alone. The digital display above the door, which had been dark, suddenly flickered to life, but it didn't show the number 7 where they'd stopped. Instead, a new number materialized, glowing in unsettling crimson. 13. 13. Laura frowned. Her building didn't have a 13th floor. It went straight from 12 to 14, a common superstition among architects. She'd seen the blueprints herself when her company moved in. This was impossible. Before she could process it, a low groan echoed through the shaft, and with a metallic screech, the elevator doors began to slide open. But what she saw wasn't one of the familiar, polished office floors. Instead, a narrow, unfinished corridor stretched out before her. The air that wafted in was cold and damp, carrying the smell of wet concrete and dust. Bare light bulbs, baked in grime, hung from exposed wires, casting long dancing shadows. The walls were raw cement, and the floor was uneven, littered with debris. It looked like a construction site that had been abandoned. Her mind was racing. Was this some kind of maintenance level? A forgotten sub-basement? But the display said 30. It made no sense. She hesitated, her hand clutching the elevator's railing. The open doorway felt like a dark mouth, inviting her into the unknown. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the corridor. No answer. Just the faint drip, drip, drip of water. Somewhere in the darkness, a part of air, the logical part, screamed to stay put, to wait for rescue. But another, more primal part, was terrified of the elevator. What if it suddenly dropped? What if the doors closed again, and never reopened? The corridor, as unnerving as it was, seemed like the safer option. At least it was solid ground. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Laura took one tentative step out of the elevator and onto the dusty concrete. The air was much colder here. Her foot crunched on something, and she looked down to see a faded newspaper from decades ago. Before she could take another step, a sound behind her made her whip around. The elevator doors, with a final, decisive groan, they were sliding shut. "No, wait," she yelled, lunging back towards them. But it was too late. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal just as they sealed with a heavy, final thud. The red glow of the number 13 on the outside panel flickered once, twice, and then went dark. Silence, a deep, profound silence that felt heavier than anything she had ever known. She was alone, stranded on the floor that shouldn't exist, and as her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she started to notice things in the shadows. Shapes, faint outlines that looked almost human, and she had the sickening feeling that she was not alone after all. Thanks for watching. If you want to find out what happens to Laura on the 13th floor, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Have you ever felt like you were being watched in your own home? That unsettling feeling that you're not entirely alone, even when the doors are locked and the windows are shut tight. Laura knew that feeling all too well. It started with little things in her new apartment building. A flicker of movement in her peripheral vision. The faint scent of old paper and dust. where there shouldn't be any. Then came the whispers, so soft she thought she was imagining them, but they were always there, just at the edge of hearing, like a radio playing in another room. One evening, while heading out, she dropped her keys. They skittered across the polished floor of the hallway and slid under the gap of a door she'd never noticed before. It was a narrow, unassuming door, set flush against the wall between the 7th and 8th floors, right on the landing. It had no number, no peephole, no handle, just a small, dark keyhole. Curiosity got the better of her. Kneeling down, she peered through the tiny opening. What she saw was darkness, a sliver of an unlit space that seemed to defy the building's architecture. It was a space that shouldn't exist. As she tried to fish her keys out with her fingertips, the door creaked open just a hair. A calm voice, soft and even, echoed from the darkness within. "You don't belong here." It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact, spoken with a chilling patience. A man emerged, not from the darkness, but as if he were part of it. It was gaunt, dressed in clothes that seemed to belong to another era. He moved with a strange, unhurried grace, his feet making no sound on the floor. He never raised his voice. He never ran. He never rushed. He looked at Laura, his eyes holding a kind of ancient weariness. "The building helps me," he explained, his voice a low murmur. "It protects me. It hides what people don't want to see." He gestured vaguely to the narrow space behind him. "This is my place, the in-between." He spoke as if explaining the simple rules of a game only he understood. He told her about the forgotten spaces, the gaps in the blueprints, the areas tucked away between floors and behind walls where the unwanted things gathered. Lost memories, forgotten sorrows, and people like him. Laura stared, her fear slowly turning into a bewildering sense of awe. He wasn't a ghost, not in the traditional sense. He was something else. A caretaker of the building, his unseen soul. He said the building provided for him, shifting its structure just enough to give him what he needed. A trickle of water, a draft of air, a sliver of light. He was the building's secret, its quiet custodian. Looking at the strange, calm man who lived between the floors, Laura realized she wasn't the first person to drop her keys at his door. She wasn't the first to peek into the darkness and find something looking back, and she had a feeling she wouldn't be the last. The building had its secrets, and this was its biggest one. What do you think lives in the forgotten spaces of your world? Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever wondered what truly goes on behind closed doors? We walk past houses every day, seeing only the manicured lawns, painted shutters, but inside can be a different world entirely. This is a story about what Laura found when she stepped into one of those worlds. The house stood on a quiet, unassuming street, the kind where everyone knows everyone, but no one really knows anything at all. The man who lived there, Mr. Abernathy, was just as unassuming. A quiet, elderly man who kept to himself, but something about him felt off. Laura, a freelance journalist with an insatiable curiosity, had been drawn to the stories circulating in the neighborhood whispers of disappearances, people who had simply vanished over the years. The police had looked into it, of course, but found nothing. They were drifters, runaways, people with no strong ties. No one to miss them, no one to look for them, except Laura. One overcast afternoon, with Mr. Abernathy out for his weekly grocery run, Laura slipped into the house. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a drumbeat of fear and adrenaline. The first few rooms were unnervingly normal. Dust motes danced in the slivers of afternoon light. The air was stale, thick with the scent of old paper and something else, something faintly sweet, like potpourri left out for too long. It was the kind of house that seemed frozen in time. But Laura knew that appearances were just a curtain, and she was here to pull it back. She moved deeper into the house, her footsteps silenced by the plush, worn carpet. She found the room at the end of the hall. The door was unlocked. Taking a deep breath, she pushed it open. It wasn't a dungeon. There were no chains, no instruments of torture. It was just a room, meticulously tidy, but the contents made the air grow cold and heavy. The walls were covered in corkboards, and pinned to them were lives. Photographs stared back at her. A smiling young woman at a bus stop, a man with a backpack looking up at a street sign, a teenager with defiant eyes sitting on a park bench. Beside each photos were small, personal items. A single earring, a worn-out train ticket, a faded library card, and newspaper clippings. Not big headlines, but tiny, almost invisible articles from the back pages. Missing persons reports, brief mentions of individuals who had last been seen in the area, and then nothing. Just absence. There were no bodies, no bloodstains, no signs of struggle. It was a museum of the forgotten, a curated collection of people who had been erased. Laura realized with a sickening lurch that the man who lived here, the quiet Mr. Abernathy, didn't see himself as a monster. He didn't see himself as a killer. In his twisted reality, he was a collector, a caretaker of memories for those no one else would remember. He was a remover of people he had decided the world wouldn't miss. Laura's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling as she started taking pictures. This was the proof. Note of more than not in the way the police would understand it, but proof of a chilling, methodical obsession. She had to get out. She had to show someone. As she backed out of the room, her eyes scanned the neat piles of boxers stacked in the corner. One was slightly ajar. Curiosity, that dangerous instinct that had brought her here, took over. She lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of yellowed tissue paper, was a new photograph. It was a candid shot, slightly blurry, of a woman with her back to the camera, slipping through a back door. Her own back door. The one she had just entered through. Her own house. A cold dread, colder and deeper than anything she had ever felt, washed over her. He knew she was coming. This wasn't just a collection of the past. It was a preparation for the future, and pinned neatly beside the photograph of her was a small, empty space on the corkboard, just waiting for her. Laura held her breath, listening. Silence. Was he gone? Had he given up? She stared at the elevator doors, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The button was still lit, a small, defiant beacon in the dimly lit hallway. She'd been waiting for what felt like an eternity, her mind racing. Why did she take this job? This late-night cleaning shift in a deserted office building was supposed to be easy money. But the building manager, there was something off about him from the start. His smile never quite reached his eyes, and he always seemed to be watching her. Tonight, that feeling had intensified into sheer terror when she found the locked door in the sub-basement, the one he explicitly told her to never, ever approach. Curiosity, her fatal flaw, had gotten the better of her, and what she heard behind that door, it made her blood run cold. She had to get out. She had fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking so badly she could barely dial. No signal. Of course, this deep in the building, she was completely cut off. Panic began to set in, a cold wave washing over her. She had to get to the lobby, to the street, to anyone. The elevator was her only way out. She had pressed the button, her prayer a frantic whisper in the oppressive silence, and then she heard it, the slow, deliberate scrape of a shoe on the concrete floor, echoing from the far end of the corridor. It was him. He knew. He knew she'd been snooping. She didn't look back. She didn't dare. She just stared at the elevator, willing it to arrive, to save her. The sound of his footsteps grew louder, closer. It wasn't a run, not a chase. It was a slow, confident stalk. He was enjoying this. The sound was terrifyingly calm, each step a promise of what was to come. Then, a miracle. A soft chime echoed in the hallway, and the elevator door slid open with a gentle whoosh. For a split second, Laura was frozen, staring into the empty, metallic box. This was it. Her one and only chance. She launched herself forward, stumbling into the elevator just as the man's shadow fell across the threshold. He was right there, his form silhouetted against the weak hope in his eyes. She could see the glint in his eyes, a cold, predatory amusement. His lips curled into that same unsettling smile. He wasn't rushing. He just stood there, watching her, as if to say, "You can't escape." Laura's hands flew to the control panel, her fingers frantically jabbing at the door, close button. It felt like time had slowed down. each second stretching into an agony of suspense. The man took a single, slow step forward. The doors began to slide shut, the gap between them shrinking, closing window on her nightmare. Just before they sealed, she saw his hand reach out, his fingers brushing against the cold steel. They closed. She was safe, or so she thought. No sooner had the doors locked than the elevator gave a violent lurch, throwing her against the wall. A deafening screech of tortured metal filled the small space, and the floor dropped out from under her. It wasn't a descent, it was a free fall. The numbers above the door blurred as they plummeted past floors. Her stomach shot into her throat, and a scream was ripped from her lungs, swallowed by the noise. Was this it? Was he crashing the elevator? Had she just traded one horrible fate for another? Just as she braced for impact, convinced she was about to be crushed into nothing, the elevator jolted to a sudden, bone-jarring halt. The emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie red glow. She was thrown to the floor, her head smacking against the railing. For a moment, everything was black. Then, a chime, the same gentle chime as before, so surreal in this moment of chaos. Slowly, shakily, the doors began to open. Laura scrambled to her feet, her body screaming in protest, every muscle tensed for another attack. Was he waiting for her? Had he somehow gotten down here first? The doors slid fully open, revealing not a dark basement, but the bright, familiar lobby. Her mind couldn't process it. How? But there was no time for questions. The lobby was a whirlwind of flashing red and blue lights, painting the walls in strobing colors. Police officers were everywhere, their voices sharp and urgent. They were shouting, moving with purpose, securing the scene. And then she saw them lead someone out in handcuffs. But it wasn't the manager. It was someone she'd never seen before. Through the crowd of uniforms, she caught a glimpse of the front desk. It was empty. The manager, the man who had haunted her steps, the man with the cold smile, was gone, vanished as if he had never been there at all. The police asked her questions, but her answers were a jumble. The only thing she knew for sure was that something terrible had been happening in that building, and she had stumbled right into the middle of it. As they wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, one question burned in her mind, a question that would haunt her dreams for years to come. If the police had the real criminal, then who was the man in the hallway? And where did he go? Let me know in the comments what you think happened to the manager. The old building looked ordinary, just another high-rise scraping the sky. But for those who knew its secrets, it was a place of shadows and whispers. The official report, of course, saw nothing wrong. They came, they measured, they documented. Their conclusion was stark, clinical, and utterly wrong. No 13th floor, Tay declared. Just a skip from 12 to 14, a common superstition in architecture. No hidden corridor, Tay insisted. The blueprints were clean, the walls solid. Their thermal cameras and ground-penetrating radar found nothing but concrete and steel. No evidence. That was the final word. The strange occurrences, the disappearances, the chilling testimonies from past tenants all dismissed as mass hysteria or elaborate hoaxes. The case was closed, but for me, it was anything but closed. I was one of the lucky ones, or maybe just one of the ones who hadn't been fully claimed yet. I had lived there. I had seen the door that shouldn't exist at the end of the 12th floor hallway. A simple, unmarked wooden door where a solid wall was supposed to be. I had felt the unnatural cold that seeped from beneath it, heard the faint, distorted music that sometimes leaked through. I had followed my neighbor, a quiet man named Arthur, one evening. Luke, drawn, almost hypnotized, as he walked towards that impossible door, opened it, and stepped through without a backward glance. I never saw him again. The police didn't believe me. Imagination, they said, patting my shoulder. Stress. They showed me the blueprints. They walked me to the spot where I claimed the door had been. There was nothing but a smooth, painted wall. They even knocked on it for my benefit. Solid. It was then I knew I had to get out. I broke my lease, packed my life into boxers, and ran. I didn't care about the deposit. You can't put a price on your sanity. or your soul. The day I moved out, I felt the building watching me. I swear, the windows looked like 1,000 vacant eyes, and a cold gust of wind followed me all the way to my car, carrying a whisper that sounded like a sigh of disappointment. For weeks, I lived in a state of hypervigilance. Every creak in my new apartment sent my heart racing. Every shadow in the corner of my eye made me jump. I saw a therapist who told me it was post-traumatic stress. She was kind, but she didn't understand. How could she? You can't medicate away a memory that everyone else tells you is a fantasy. I started to doubt myself. Was it all in my head? Did I invent the door? Did Arthur just move away without telling anyone? The official report was so confident, so absolute. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was the one who was broken, not the building. Then, the letter arrived. It was in a plain white envelope, slipped under my door. No stamp, no postmark, and no return address. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The paper inside was crisp and heavy, and a single sentence was typed in the center. The font was old-fashioned, like something from a vintage typewriter. Just 7 words that turned my blood to ice and validated every fear I had tried so desperately to suppress. The letter read, "The building always finds new tenants." Suddenly, I understood. The building wasn't just haunted. It was hungry. It was a predator that wore a disguise of brick and mortar. The 13th floor, the hidden corridors, they weren't missing. They were the trap. The building consumes people, absorbs them, and then erases any evidence they were ever there. It alters blueprints, memories, and reality itself to protect its secret. Arthur wasn't gone. He was part of the building now. And this letter, it wasn't a threat. It was an invitation, a reminder that I had escaped, but I was still marked. It was telling me that my old room was empty, waiting, and sooner or later, someone new would turn the key, step inside, and hear the faint, distorted music beckoning them from the end of the hall. This video is a work of fiction. All characters, events, locations, and situations are entirely fictional. This story is created for entertainment purposes only and does not depict real events. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please reach out. There are resources available, and you don't have to go through it alone. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe for more.